Welcome to the Cabin Culture Podcast, where we spend a little more time diving deeper into all the fun parts of cabin culture. I like to think of this as both the material and imagined expressions of how cabin lovers, dwellers, builders, and designers wish to live a more simple and authentic life. Today we're welcoming Carrie from Roost North Rentals, whose journey from a self-described failed stay-at-home mom to the owner of 9 successful vacation rentals in Traverse City, Michigan, offers a masterclass in thoughtful growth and systematic hospitality. From her first casual property purchase in 2015 to her latest A-frame renovation and plans for an 18-cottage resort, Carrie shares how creating strong systems and maintaining high standards has allowed her to scale while keeping the personal touch that makes each stay special. We'll explore how she transformed a $75,000 A-frame disaster into a stunning retreat, and why sometimes the best business decisions come from following your gut while keeping one eye on the numbers. Whether you're dreaming of growing your rental portfolio, curious about the evolution of hospitality over the last decade, or fascinated by the intersection of systems and soul in hosting, this conversation offers both practical wisdom and inspiring insights. We'll dive into everything from commercial laundry solutions to the importance of proper labeling, if you decide to label at all, and why sometimes the best growth happens when you take your time. Let's do it. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks.
Carrie, where am I talking to you from? Give people an idea of where you are.
Yeah. So I'm currently sitting in our office in downtown Traverse City, Michigan. So northern Michigan. I chose to not be at one of my rentals today. We have a lot going on at them. So this is like a nice, calm space. You have like the clean corner.
Yeah. Well, you have, am I correct in saying 9 rentals?
Yeah. So we have 9 rentals. We started in 2015 and just slowly bought a rental a year. So now we have 9 rentals and then we manage one for someone else. And so, we've kind of created a little business out of it. So this office that I'm at is pretty much like a commercial laundromat. So we have 2 commercial washers and 3 commercial dryers and a whole system of all of our sheets. So imagine having 9 rentals. We have 3 sets of sheets that are getting circulated at all times. So really, I got this space for my cleaners to use, but I have a little office. We have like a little marketing office with all of our swag that we like to give out and our welcome gifts and all of our materials. And so it's been kind of fun 10 years into business to like actually have an office, even though
Yes.
it's not very glamorous.
Well, okay, I'm going to dive into your story in a second, but I do want to start with laundry because this is very timely. I was on a call this morning with someone who founded the company Hamper, which does outsourcing of laundry. It started for residential. Like you can just, it's kind of like an Uber or an Instacart where you can hire someone to come do your laundry, I guess, or they take it and do it. I'm not exactly sure, but they're moving into more commercial. And she was trying to understand the pain points of a short-term rental owner when it comes to laundry. And I could communicate a little bit of them, but it's so funny that you just mentioned you have commercial, because without 9 properties, it's like a little bit of a pain. If they use a ton of laundry, you might be behind, but it isn't a regular pain point for me. But with 9, it must be.
Yeah, well, I think our big goal is we get really busy in the summer. So we're very seasonal up here. So in the off season, which is typically the end of October when the leaves fall really until probably Labor or Memorial Day. So but once Memorial Day hits, we're like so busy. So the idea of our cleaners actually doing laundry at the units takes so much time. So if we have a unit that has, 4 beds and a sleeper sofa, one, it's taxing on that washer and dryer in the unit. That's really supposed to be there for guests and light use. And we want to make sure that it's working for them. And just, the time. So it's like, if we're doing regular deep cleans, they can really get in and turn a place very quickly and still do a good job, but taking that laundry. And what we've found in the past is like going to the laundromat for our cleaners is such a pain in the butt.
Yeah,
Because
because you have to sit
you have to
there to
sit
wait for it to be
there and
done.
people were getting mad at my cleaners. They're like, wait, you're taking up all of these washers and dryers. I'm genuinely trying to wash my underwear for tomorrow. So you need to get out of the way. So for us, it just really made sense to make that investment. And it's worked out really well. So I like being really organized and having systems. And I really just applied that to our laundry. So we have like a really concise packing list. We have these clear drawstring bags that we put the whole sheet sets in. We have them labeled of what
Mm,
unit it's for.
uh-huh,
So yeah, it just works really well. So we basically run like a cleaning company, but we're only doing it for our units. But yeah, once you have
right.
9, 10 units, that's a lot.
You kind of have to. I mean, this is why you were recommended to me for the podcast because I now, off the top of my head, can't remember who recommended you, but said that you did a lot of mentoring for them as they started their rentals.
Yeah.
And once you get to the point of 9 to 10 properties, you have to get good at systematizing in order to make it profitable and make everyone happy all the time.
Yeah.
How did you get to that point though?
Yeah. So I think for me, I just realized that you can get really stuck in okay, I'm in this emergency mode and I'm just going to keep going and putting out these fires. And I think most people that get into this are really good at that. Like we're really good problem solvers. We can handle a
Yeah.
lot of stress. Like we can do it. But I realized like I don't want to live my life like that. And the reason I got into short-term rentals is so I could be a stay-at-home mom with my son. He was 4 months old when we started. It's kind of cool. He's turning 10 next week. Our company is turning 10 this summer. So it sort of aligns with that. But yeah, I just realized like I want to get to a point where I'm still providing like the best service to my guests because I do genuinely love hosting guests. But if I am putting all my energy into putting out all these fires and running around and being crazy all the time when I don't have to be, like, I'm not able to put my best energy into either when there
Right.
is an actual emergency or like, I don't want to be tired of the guest asking for things. I want to be able to have that free time to be like, oh, you have a birthday? Let me give you something special. Or like,
Right.
you have
The
an
fun
anniversary.
stuff.
Yeah, the fun things that are fun for me or marketing and things like that. So for me, it just was so important. And I strive to that. I always say, like, I don't want a guest to contact me and that means like emergency. So I never want them to ask me like,
Right.
okay, how do I do this? What do I do with this? So anytime I get those messages, I'm always trying to tweak how I do things, put more things in our welcome guide, put more QR codes on things. So I just sort of applied that to the laundry. And what was kind of cool is my cleaner before the team we have now, she really had a good grasp. So we really knew kind of how much laundry we went through because we looked at all the options. We looked at outsourcing it, but it's very expensive. So
Yeah.
we kind of had a really good idea of what we would need. So it really helped. I think all of that experience going into it allowed us to like create something good. And I think that that's what it takes. You have to kind of go through it in order to know what you even need. And I think that's Allison actually from Water Camp, I think was the one that
That's right.
recommended.
That's right. That's who it
And
was.
her places are amazing and she's doing an amazing job, but she um really wanted that extra time. She has kids too. So it's like she came to us being like, okay, what kind of systems do you guys have in place? What do you guys do? And how can I skip all of that? And that's the
Right.
cool thing about finding someone like that. It's like, I would love to skip all that time and then have this end result if I can. So I love podcasts like this where we can start sharing those things and opening that up for other people that might be struggling.
What is the context in which you mentored her and others? Is it like a meetup group? Is it a Facebook group? How do you share everything that you've learned with
So
others?
I do a lot of different things. I have a specific mentorship that I open up here and there. I don't have one open right now, but it is just a select group. It doesn't have to be women. It tends to be women. It tends to be moms. It tends to be people like me. Um, and I really focused it on people that already have properties and that want to like keep adding properties or add those systems. So not necessarily geared to
Yeah.
someone that's like, I just want to get into short-term rentals. I've never done anything before. But I also am an Airbnb community leader for Michigan. So I help facilitate events where we do a lot of education for those people that want to either optimize their listing or, get into Airbnbs. And then we also just formed a Michigan Short-Term Rental Association through Rent Responsibly. And I'm on the founding board of that too. So we do a lot of education and sharing of knowledge that way too. So I just love being able to give back, especially now that I'm in this stage of my career. Like, we're not adding properties currently, so I have that time to be able to offer it to other people. And
Right. Right.
having that community is so awesome. So if I can give back, I get so much out of it as well. Like, they all teach
Right.
me things too. And if you've looked at Allison stuff, like, she has such amazing properties and amazing things that she does. So I feel like I mentored her, but she gave me so much back too.
Okay, but how do you avoid when I think of like Airbnb and community, I think of Facebook groups. How do you avoid the energy that comes with that community where because there's different kinds of hosts. You know that if you've traveled on Airbnb, you know it if you've hosted on Airbnb. How do you avoid the drain of people who are like, "Oh my gosh, just like complaining left and right about guests," and like, yeah, how do you avoid that the energetic drain of Airbnb Facebook groups? Or do you not find that
Yeah.
maybe?
Well, I also feel like I complain about Airbnb. I mean, I feel like I complain about Airbnb too. I do think anytime you're on a platform and you're gonna complain about it, I don't think any software is
No, I don't mean
perfect.
Airbnb
I do
because
feel
'cause I'm
like,
with you.
yeah, so I think, yeah, where they're, like, upset about different things, and
Yeah.
is that what you're referring to?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yep.
think we get that. I do think we have good, like, on those moderation. So if someone is kind of getting really aggressive or getting aggressive with other people or kind of going down that negative route, we can kind of give them a warning. But I think we've really spent a lot of time just fostering those good conversations. So I think we're pretty lucky on staying away from that. I think if you go into those Facebook groups that kind of anyone can come on, and there's a lot more negativity. I think with these, we do also ask questions. So we kind of filter the people that get to come in to the group too, just making sure they
Right.
actually do have an Airbnb, that they're an active host, that they follow the rules. So,
Right. Okay, I wanna go back to the beginning and how you first got into the world of short-term rentals. Which was your first one, and how did that start for you?
yeah, so our first one was back in 2015. So I always say I'm a failed stay-at-home mom because I tried to stay at home and then started getting like very squirrely about it very quickly. And my husband started talking about maybe like getting an investment. And I really didn't understand what he was talking about. At this time, we had sort of downsized, moved up back to my hometown. So we had a little bit of extra money, and our realtor called one day and said, like, hey, I found this investment. You can short-term rent it. And I just didn't know anything about it, but I was like, okay, let's go check it out. We were just so casual about it. I remember her being like, why aren't once we closed on it, it was our busy season. And we're like, we're going to go on vacation. She's like, you're not going to stay here and get this thing up and running. We're like, it's fine. It'll be okay. And now I'm glad we did that. But just looking back, I'm like, okay, yeah, I realize why she was trying to put pressure on us. We
Yeah.
only have a certain amount of
Yeah.
months to make our money. But yeah, so it wasn't really anything that we planned. But I got to pick out the finishes. I got to furnish it, and then just started hosting and really loved it. Like, this was back when I was meeting people
Mhm.
in person. So everyone, I would go walk them through the property, and kind of get that immediate interaction and feedback. And so, yeah, it kind of went into like this obsession of like, okay, I want more.
Yeah.
uh,
Wait, I wanna ask
yeah.
a question about that though, because I feel like that's something that's gone out, like, it's people don't meet them at the property anymore, so when you bought that first one and started doing that, did someone tell you you should do that, or was that just, like, your instinctive hosting, like,
Yeah,
instincts
I
that you were
think
like, "No, I should
yeah,
meet."
I think back then too, I feel like I always say I'm like I feel like the grandma of the short-term rental world because I feel like back then people really didn't know a lot about Airbnb.
Nope.
And so I didn't have all these resources that people do now. Like I didn't
Right.
have anyone to look to. I didn't really know what I was doing. We actually started putting our stuff on Craigslist, and then we did have Airbnb, we had VRBO. But yeah, no one really told me. And it didn't work out meeting people. I think I learned really quickly, like, this is not working out well because I wanted to change everything. So I would end up spending so much time. And then every little request, I'd be like, you're right. I'm going to go change that right now. And now I realize, like, you can't make everyone happy. Of course, I want that
Right.
feedback. And I do make a lot of changes, but I also don't have to do it right then. Like, this is what we provide.
Right.
We gave them what we provided. But even that,
Yeah.
I didn't have like a standard list of like, okay, this is what you have to provide. I just thought this is what I would want. And it ended up being now what people call like, not luxury, but like we leave so much stuff for them, like flossers and face wipes and, just
And you've been doing that since day
from the
one.
beginning because I'm like, this is what I would want on vacation. I don't leave tampons. I was listening to another one of your podcasts. And I do feel like I need to do that because I'm the same way. Like if someone had a tampon and I was in an emergency situation, I would be like a client forever. So I'm going to add that.
Right.
But yeah, so
Yeah.
I just sort of like started doing that. And I think what happened, which I feel kind of proud of and kind of cool, is I think I just set the standard in our area. And so everyone that came in after me had to sort of like that was like the minimum of what needed to happen. And if you wanted to be above that,
Huh.
you had to go. So, and I love that because then I keep wanting to get better and growing. So,
I love that this can go one of two ways because I started in 2014. So also in the age of like, oh, anything goes. And I hosted a guest bedroom in my house with a futon bed pulled out as a
but
bed
that's
with a guest
what
book.
Airbnb was before. So I feel like that's fair.
But you were like, "What would I want? How would I wanna be treated?" And I was like, "What can I get away with?" That was yeah, and I would get a lot of 5 stars, but it was only because I was there, so I was very friendly, and I would, like, cook them dinner or whatever they wanted, but the amenities were lacking, I now realize. You were setting the bar for everyone else. I was not.
That's so funny. Well, now you do. It sounds like now you do. So that's good.
Yeah, well, because and I think this is what's so interesting. One of my questions was, how have you seen the world of short-term rentals change in the last 9 years, 10 years now? Because you've been doing this for so long. And I feel like one of the big ways is that back then we didn't have community. We didn't have anyone throwing out ideas or telling us how to do it or offering mentorship options. It just didn't exist back then, I feel like.
Yeah, we didn't have community. It definitely felt alone. And what the biggest thing that I felt alone on is I hated saying I was an investor because I didn't really feel like I fell into what a traditional investor was because I really was doing it because I loved hosting and this was an avenue to
Right.
do it. So like real estate was an avenue for me to do interior design, to host people, to like kind of get that
Uh-huh.
creative side. And so it was really hard for me when I made decisions. I still do this. Yes, there's decisions based on money, but a lot of it's like gut instinct. A lot of it's like, okay, this is
Yeah.
what I want to do. And so, but
Yeah.
I do feel like, so that's why it's good and bad. It's good that that there wasn't all of this stuff because then I could kind of pave my own way, but it did feel very lonely. And so I do feel like the
Yeah.
last couple of years, I actually went to Level Up Your Listing a couple years ago and was like, "Oh my gosh, wow, there's so many women. There's so many people that are doing this now because of co-hosting. So there's so many people that can get
Yep.
in this because of the hospitality side of it. They don't have to
Yep.
have the capital." And so it was really life-changing because I'm like, "Oh my gosh, there is this community." Because I sort of shut down and hid from that part of it, and didn't go to conferences. Really, I was only really showing up online to like promote my town. I wasn't I didn't really have to sell on Instagram really back then. As you know, you put something online and it would book up. Like there wasn't
Yeah.
as much competition.
Right.
Um, so yeah, so I feel like I was like, oh, now there's this whole world of people. I don't know. So I'm glad I went on my journey, but it is cool now that people have that and like know from the beginning that they have people that they can learn from, that they can connect with, and they don't have to feel alone, like, on some of that
Yeah.
stuff.
Right, right. When was the moment that you started? Because I agree with you. Back in the day, there were so few Airbnbs that it wasn't that hard to sell it. I could get away with a futon bed and friendly service. That sounded maybe inappropriate. Not that kind of service, but when was the tipping point where you were like, oh, there's a lot more in the area now. Maybe this is starting to get saturated. Maybe I need to do something different, or maybe you never felt it because yours were pretty stellar. But
Yeah, I think there was a while there where I was like pretty much I was like, oh, kind of anything could work. Not that that's what we ended up doing. Thankfully, like my husband and I are in on this together, even though he has a full time job. But it really did help. I think all of our Airbnbs ended up being a good fit for us because it would have to be something that we both agreed upon. So just because I had a gut feeling or I wanted to go in a direction, he would look at it more from the financial or like more reasonable
yep,
perspective of it. And then when we would both agree on something, that's what we would end up getting. Um, but there was, I feel like obviously when COVID hit, it was very scary because I did not know what was going to happen. We have in our first 7 units, all of those are in commercial district. They're all like townhouses or condos, and they all have permits through the city. So they're all in the downtown area. All of those got pulled from us. So we could not rent. And so it was a really scary time. And then once we
yes,
got back, we had such a pent up demand and people weren't able to travel
yeah,
internationally. So people were discovering Traverse City for the first time from Chicago, from Detroit, Grand Rapids. They were able to drive. And it just went insane where we were booked out the most we've ever booked. We're able to charge the most we've ever charged. And then it stopped. So now
yep.
we're kind
I
of,
can so relate to
yeah, so now
this.
we're kind of back to that time where we are really going back to seasonal. And I think it is really, for me, I think the the advantage that I have is that I've seen it and I know that I can survive in that seasonal time where okay, winter's
Yeah.
winter, where you make most of the money in the summer. And I think a lot of people that got into it, like during that, people are calling it like the COVID boom, are like having a hard time mentally, I think, with it to be like, okay, no,
Yeah.
there is this change. And also, like, because of the COVID boom, we did get a lot more competition. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's just really interesting to kind of, I always say, like, I'm in it for the long run. So it's kind of interesting to just kind of see how things have been playing out and what will continue to happen. I think now that there is so much competition, you are seeing those hosts really rise. And I think for me, it's good that don't really have to change a lot. I mean, I still am and I
Right.
still like to grow, but like I'm kind of I got into it for the right reasons. Our like brand is really solid. Our, customer service is really solid and what we provide. And so I'm not as worried maybe as someone that's like, I put bare minimum effort into this. I just got in it to make money.
Right.
But I'm seeing a lot of people selling because the housing prices have gone up in our area a lot. So they're looking at probably, okay, what would this take me to make this back if I just kept
Right.
renting it? And a lot of regulations in Michigan have been
Yeah.
insane. So it's,
Which works in a city where people can buy it as a primary home. If you're trying to sell a rental in a tourist area, it's a lot harder
yes.
because with interest rates and rising costs right now, it's really I had this conversation with another owner the other day where you can't make the numbers work in the same way that you could pre 2020 and even during 2020. But if you do the math now on a new build or even a new property with housing prices and interest rates, and a saturated market, you just can't make the numbers work in the same way.
No.
So you're kind of like a little bit screwed if you got in and you're in a tourist area and then you want to sell it and then someone else is crunching those numbers unless they're going to live in it as a full-time home, which in a lot of cases due to the housing market that's good if people buy them for full-time homes, but it is a lot trickier now because of that COVID boom
Yeah, and a lot of the
than it was before.
regulations that have been put on some of these townships now have said if you sell them, it can no longer be a short-term rental, and that was not the case when people bought it. So those changes in regulation did not get grandfathered in. So the good thing about our area, good and bad, is like people are discovering it, and so people are buying these as second homes, so they don't really care about that price. To them, it
Yeah.
still feels reasonable. But yeah, I think it will really change our short-term rental market up here. But I think again, we bought most of our places very reasonable, so we're able to like not be so affected, and so it just puts us a little bit in a better position, um, to not be so panicked about like, okay, what's going to
Right.
happen with everything.
Do you find that with a portfolio of 9 houses versus 1 or 2, that that increases the anxiety for you in, like, turbulent times or decreases it because you have more to kind of float the boat?
I think
I'm wondering,
economy,
like, for other people who've thought about
yeah,
scaling.
economy of scale. I think I've always just said that, like, because it helps. So, like, if you, like, for example, my cleaning team now, we have enough units to really provide like a good living for them, so they're going to be loyal to us. Like I'm not going to be having to compete with other people's units. I know that we're their priority. Same thing with maintenance. Like we have that volume where we can be a priority, where we're not just like a one-off
That really
person. So
helps.
yeah, I feel like for me it really helps, and it really helped us grow our portfolio with those other units. So for example, our A-frame that we bought, that was actually during COVID. When I was
So you're a COVID boomer
Yeah,
too.
so technically I am. I bought that during COVID, and I would have never bought that if we didn't have our other properties. Like if we didn't have our other 8 properties where I knew there was income, we were able to take some of that money and just have some flexibility and have a little fun. Like we definitely bought this place. I don't know if you looked at pictures of it before, and if you guys go on my Instagram, like look through for the pre A-frame pictures, because it was a disaster, and anyone that saw me or walked through it or saw pictures was like, "What are you doing?" So, but I was able
But you had a
I had a
vision.
vision, and I was able to like have some more fun. So I do feel like there are so many benefits to having that economy of scale to allow you to do that. I wouldn't have done that if it was my first rental or probably even my third or fourth, but knowing that like I'm going to be okay. I have this revenue stream coming in. We could always like pull money out of the rentals if we need to, like it
Yeah.
just gave me this really peace of mind to like go on a little adventure.
Yeah, which is why originally, I mean, I had you on because Allison recommended you, but also because you do have one cabin that you've added to your portfolio. But I will ask, like, what made you, because is this in the same location? How far are each of them from each other?
So most of them are, so the first 7 that we have are all really close. They're all in like downtown Traverse City area. So like only a few minutes away from each other. So this one actually was our first one. We're about 20 or 30 minutes outside of town. So being
Okay.
from the area was really helpful, because I think an investor would be like, is this in the middle of nowhere? Which it is, but like I know that people will still want to go there. It's like
Yep.
closer to these other little cute towns near us. And but yeah, it was we
Because it
ended
looks
up
like it's further away.
yes, it's a little further away. And yeah, so we I've always wanted an A-frame. We wanted to build one, but then it ended up being kind of expensive. So it's just always been on my mind. And this one popped up, and I was like, "Oh, this is gonna go," even though I knew it was a disaster. But I think it was listed for like $75,000, super
Oh my
cheap.
God.
And so I called my realtor. I'm like, "Hey, I'm quarantined right now," because this was back when the health department was like, if you were exposed, they were calling you to make sure anyone that was exposed had to stay home. So I couldn't leave my house. So I was quarantined. My husband wasn't testing positive. So I was like, hey, I sent my contractor, my realtor, and my husband. I'm like, go see this thing. It's going to go so fast. I think we're going to have to offer cash. I think we're going to have to do it as is. So, like, kind of assess the damage. So they went there.
Wait, but he's the numbers guy. Did he have enough time to like crunch all the numbers and make sure it was a good purchase?
Well, I think in his mind, because we ended up buying it for 95. So I think in his
Okay.
mind, I think he thought we weren't going to have to do as much work as we did on it. And so I think he was like, okay, we're good. Like, this is a reasonable, we can play with this. Like, this is fine. But they literally went and walked through it and sent me a video with no electricity. So the video that they sent me was with their phone camera. And I, and they're like, And I guess it's like I got the nod from them a little bit, like, we don't hate it, because we were looking at all kinds of stuff up to this point,
Yeah.
which must have been way worse than this. So what I just took it and ran and was like, we're doing it. So we submitted it.
You did a hell of a job with it.
Well, yeah, and we ended up putting about 150,000 into it, so more than we had like budgeted for it, but I really had a vision. I don't know what it was, but when I saw this place, it had this add-on built-in front porch or front mudroom that was all like kind of rotting away. But I could just see it with that off it. I could see it with the cedar, round cedar shingles, and I could see it with like a sleek black roof. Like I just had this vision from the beginning of what it would look like.
Yeah.
And all of those materials were not cheap, but I didn't want, I was like, I can't not do it this way because I'm going to be really upset with myself at the end of this
Yeah, you wanna do it
if I
right.
didn't do it the way that I wanted it. So we spent a little
Yeah.
bit money. And once we got into it, we realized, okay, there's all these different sources of heating. So we had to get mini splits, which is a really great option for an A-frame because of
Yep.
how it's shaped. And yeah, we just sort of got into it and realized like, oh, we're gonna have to rip out the whole kitchen, and oh, we're gonna have to replace the floors, and
That's how the
so
renovations go.
yeah. And thankfully I worked with someone that was able to kind of be a little flexible, because I do feel like I work really well, like once I'm in the space and I have those constraints, because then as we're pulling things apart, I can start seeing it. So it originally had a big loft with like a little loft, and we ended up enclosing and kind of building out the floor and the walls, and built two built-in bunk beds or twin beds, and then still had the main as the loft. So we figured like, okay, kids can kind of go in the bedroom. So, but that wasn't the
Yeah.
vision at first. I didn't even know that that was something that I wanted until we kind of got into it. Same thing with, we
Yeah.
built a day bed under the stairs, So once we were in the space, pulling things out and moving things around, but I really wanted to preserve as much as possible. So if you look at it, you'll see like a lot of the original wood is still inside.
Yep.
Um, but we had to change. There was a lot that we had to change. And everything seemed to be the worst anyone's ever seen. Like we pulled the roof apart and they're like, this is the worst roof we've ever seen. I'm like, great.
Helpful, guys.
I
Thank you.
know. Yeah. So I think when you go into something like that, if you want to be able to do it right, you've got to have a comfort of knowing that you can put the money that needs to be put into it. So yeah, I do feel like
Yeah.
having those other rentals. So I always like to tell people, like, if you're going to go into a project, especially if it has a lot of unknown variables, which is a lot of building and renovation does,
Yes.
you want to make sure you have the money to be able to do it, because the worst thing is you get partway through and can't get to the finish
Right.
line.
Right. Right. If you're dreaming about a cabin build, or are in the midst of a build, or you just bought a place and are getting ready to host for the very first time, regardless of where you are, sometimes you just need a little help along the way. Shared experiences from someone who's been there, advice from someone who's learned a lot of lessons the hard way. That's me. Or a cheerleader as you finish up. All of these reasons are exactly why I started offering cabin consultations to our Instagram followers and friends who could use some specific one-on-one help. I can't promise to solve all your problems, but I can promise to be transparent about our build costs and process, our organization and project management systems, our favorite and least favorite tools for renting, how we market, and how we found ourselves with almost 80,000 Instagram followers and 100% occupancy in our first year of hosting at Cozy Rock. So if that sounds like it might help you, feel free to visit us at staycozycabin.com or on Instagram at Cozy Rock Cabin and sign up for a time to chat there. Someone described it to me during COVID. We were talking about our businesses. I can't remember if I've said this on the podcast before, but we were talking about our businesses and like revenues. So not rentals, but she was a potter and I'm a filmmaker. And one gets ripped out. Like all of my in-person filming was just gone. And it was like, what do I have left? Right. And we started thinking about our business as a table, and like each revenue stream is a leg to that table, which gives you each one that you add, you have more stability. So for example, if like all of a sudden I can't do in-person filming, but I also do live streaming, suddenly I still have a little bit of stability. It's harder in different industries, but in rentals, I think about it a little bit that way. Although you did experience during COVID this everything shuts down. Now no, I only had one during COVID and that one got shut down. I can imagine if that happened again. Now we have them in different locations. They might handle it differently. You don't lose all the legs in the same way that COVID kind of chopped them all
Yeah,
off.
I do feel like a lot of people had to either, pivot, or it really, and the good thing with being a team with my husband is he is the financial guy. So having a reserve is so important to him. And I
Yeah.
realized it really quickly when we were in COVID, like, we're going to be okay. Like, we can still pay our
Yeah.
mortgages. We're going to be able to make it through. I don't know for how long, like, who knows, like, how long this is going to last, but at least we
Right.
can, like, not be panicked
There's something.
for, like, at least like through this slow season, or through the busy season. But that was the other thing that happened is, like, because we're in a seasonal town, most people had already struggled through winter, and then COVID hits when it's going to be your busy season.
Right.
And
Right. It
so,
was
and
right
it
at the
gets like,
start of that.
yeah, so it was really challenging, but that happened with a lot of small businesses. So I think just really um, made the importance of, like, okay, we need to make sure we're holding even more money back,
That's
for
right.
those unexpected things that can happen, because we don't want to have to sell them.
I
Especially,
don't think that can be understated enough. I remember my dad saying to me, like, maybe 6 months before COVID, I was, like, talking about some business growth thing, and he goes, "Janice, I just wanna pause you and say that you have yet in your years of business ownership to experience a recession. So I'm very proud of you that you've built a business and it's grown, but I just want you to be aware." And I was like, "Ugh, what a fun sponge. Like, calm down, dad. Like, let me dream, let me chase my dreams. What are you doing?" And then, like, 6 months later, COVID hit. And all of a sudden, I was, like, panicked because everything shut down. And now, of course, my reserves are, like, 10 times what they
I
would
know
have
it's
been.
probably like
And
you've gone to the other direction, but I do feel
I
like,
oh my god, I totally have.
but I do think it's like a good mind shift to be like, actually, that helps me be more creative because I'm
Mm,
able to, like, have that security. And so I do feel like for me,
yeah,
like, one of the things is, like, my husband kept his, like, full-time job. So, like, our insurance and, like, our bills were paid through that. So I was able to sort of, like, just keep reinvesting and, like, kind of having fun with it. So it allowed me to not have so much pressure on myself to be like, "Oh my
yeah,
gosh, I'm the breadwinner for this." So I think, like, that's why I always encourage people, like, yes, it's nice to eventually, like, potentially quit your job or, like, retire your husband eventually if that's your goals, but, like, wait to do that until you feel really
yes,
comfortable, because when things like that happen, or regulation changes or whatever happens, like, you don't wanna just be so tied to that. And then, yeah, I feel like
that's
for
right.
me, like, again, I was able to be more creative. Like, our last 2 projects, the A-frame, and then actually, we built 2 from the ground up, but one we decided to live in and not let anyone rent it. Once I did it, that was my first build ever. I'm like, "I made too many decisions. I'm not renting this
I'm
out. This
staying.
is for me."
So that's your full-time home now?
Yes, we have a full-time home, but it's built as a
I
rental,
love
so we
that.
don't have a lot of closet space, and it's fine though.
Story of my life at Cozy Rep.
Yeah. And then,
Everyone's like, "Where are the closets?" And I'm like, "Well, that was poor planning.
yes.
Thank you for pointing it out."
Yes, and then we did our last one that we did a full build again.
Is that the holiday
Yeah, the
house?
holiday house, because, and the
Okay.
reason part of the reason why we did that is because we do have land about 45 minutes from Traverse City by where we have our main house that we wanna build a resort. It's like, we're already fully
Oh,
approved for a resort. So again, all these things, it was like, well, I wanna experience building from the ground up, and I wanna experience
yes.
all this stuff. So I don't know. I kind of play the long game in a lot of things. Like, I want to have all of that, and even the laundry. It's like I want to have the experience of doing this commercial laundry, so then when we do a resort, we can just transfer that system over to it.
That's right. Okay, how much can you share about the resort?
Oh yeah. So it's already all approved. That okay, so we got the land, and
How many acres?
it's about 14 acres. It's right off of
Okay.
M22, which is like this kind of famous trunk line through, kind of, it goes curves around, like, the county up in our area, and goes down south. So it's actually called the trunk line. That's the name of the project. So kind of like roadside vibes, but
Yeah.
it's approved based on the amount of land for 18 cottages. And we
That's
have
big.
yes. So it feels a little daunting. Like when you go through the approval process, they want to know what is this going to look like when you're fully finished. So talking about like what the pool looks like kind of felt a little silly because we want to do this in phases because we're trying to like not go in with a
The long game.
partner and yeah, we're trying to do
Yep.
this slow. So we want to start with phase one, which is just probably like 4 or 5 cottages, and then grow from there. So, but it's yeah, so it's all designed. You can actually go to trunkline22.com and you can see the walkthrough video of the resort. We had an architect design it. It took us about a year to get a special use permit on it for weddings. We started that way. And then we literally got it approved, and then COVID hit. And so I was like, well, we're not doing weddings because
Oh, so you've been working on this for a
it's been a long
while.
time. So then once COVID hit, we're like, well, wait a minute. We actually wanted to put cabins on this. Let's go through the process while we're kind of shut down on doing weddings. Let's do the process of getting this approved for what we really want. So it took us about another year to go through that whole process. So we've had the approval for a couple years now. And we just are kind of re-engaging in things right now. We had a builder and then we've decided to go a different direction. So we just met with another one and sort of starting those wheels turning again. But it's a little bit interesting, especially with the fires in California. Like I just don't know what costs are going to be. Like, are we going to go through another thing like COVID where it's prices
Right.
just go crazy, materials are hard to find. So yeah, I'm excited
I have
about
heard
it though.
so many people recently talking about this dream, myself included. I considered it for a little bit, which I talked a little bit about on social media and have since abandoned that dream. So I'm excited for you. But I hear more people talking about it, but it's like you run a couple rentals and then you start to think bigger, right? And this is like the next step. But it is a big next step. Now you've been running rentals on a different scale than some people, which I feel like sets you up for a bit more success than someone like myself who like couldn't even get past, do I have one septic tank per every cabin or do I have like 3 cabins? Like even that was just, there's so many logistics to something like this.
Yeah.
What has been the hardest part for you guys so
Yeah,
far?
I think honestly is just pushing back against people because I think when I tell people, they're like, "Go, do
Mm,
it. Go fast. Like get it done." And it's like I know how big this is. And so it's like I want to make sure that I'm doing everything right. And again, if you let's say you're building and we did this. We built with a new builder that we hadn't worked with before and we ended up having some over fees. I think it ended
mhm.
up being and this time materials were still wonky. So I think we ended up like a 50 or $75,000 out of pocket, which is a lot, but times it by
Yeah.
18.
Right.
So
Right.
you really have to make sure that you have enough money that when things go wrong and are out of your control, and when it's that large of a project, you're already going to be stressed enough. So I think that's what we're really trying to do is like set ourselves up like for the best success that we can have and sort of ignore all the noise around us. Like I
Yeah.
don't care how long it takes us to do this thing. Like this is something that I want to last for a long time. Like it's a generational thing. It's in my community. I want to be very intentional about it. So and I also needed a break. Like getting something like that approved
Yes.
was very even though this was a buy right, so like it wasn't special use, so which means you're up against a lot less resistance from the community because you're basically following the rules of the land. Um, but it was a lot. So and a lot of money. We've spent about 100 grand already into this project, and we haven't even gotten our permits yet. So
Right.
civil engineer,
Just like architect, yeah.
and that's not even the land. um,
Right.
paying a consultant to help us like go through the zoning meetings, go through the zoning, and just like a year of my life doing that. So
Right. Right, which is
yeah,
valuable.
it's so valuable. So yeah, I do feel like for us, I needed to make sure we had all those steps so that I do feel like, okay, I'm feeling comfortable, but there's still a lot of unknowns. Like
Right.
there's still a lot
Right.
of things that we don't know. So I'm excited because I think it will really add to our community up there. So basically, Traverse City has a lot of hotels. Up in Leelanau County, which is where this is located, there's really not any hotels. So this or resorts. There's very few.
Yeah.
So I just think this will be a really cool project to bring people up there. So a lot of people have weddings and then they come back and stay in Traverse City. So they drive like that 45 minutes. So I just
Yeah.
think this will be a really cool project and I want to be able to do it right.
Yeah.
Um so yeah, I'm excited about
How
it, but I don't need to rush. Like I feel like I'm just in that
right.
stage of like I know the severity of it. Um yeah.
How do you think about marketing when you think about and how do you think about it differently with a project of this scale, right? So there's a lot on the line, but you also have the advantage of having done it before for 9 different properties and time. Because you're taking your time, you can really think intentionally, but that also means you're marketing a vision to begin with and then a build and then a finished product. How are you thinking about that side of things?
Yeah, so I think that's the other piece of having the experience. So we really spent a lot of time and energy, well, I did, around building a brand for our rental. So we have a brand, Roost North Rentals, that we've had a website forever. We didn't have direct booking at first. We would just direct people to Airbnb and VRBO. Now we have direct as well, but we just spent a lot of time. I love branding and marketing. That was my background, even though I feel ancient
Mm,
because we didn't have a lot of this stuff when I was marketing. I think I,
it's so different now.
oh my gosh, I think I started, yeah, I started the Facebook for my last company before I stopped working in corporate, like 11 years ago. Like they didn't even have socials. And I think I had to sell them on what a mobile site was. So it's like we're so different now, but I still love the essence of that. So I feel like for me, being able to build that brand and seeing what that looks like, and then being able to like create this other brand, I think it'll be fun to like take what I've learned from building Roost because you have to like have a lot of trust in people in order for them to want to come stay with you and stay with you again, or stay in a different property that isn't the same that they stayed in, but they know that it's a Roost North property. So they know the level of service they're going to get. They know the level of what the unit's going to be like, what our standard is. So I do feel like I
Yeah.
can, again, take that experience and just apply that to a different brand where we will still have it kind of be, we say they're going to be like sister brands basically, but
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, so I
What is the
it'll be fun to be able to like do all these other new marketing things because I feel like having a resort opens you up to a lot different types of opportunities than short-term rentals does as well.
right, right. What is the vision for guest experience at the resort? Like when you picture, let's say 5, 10 years down the line, however long it takes. Like I always in teaching, we talked about planning with the end in mind. And we would literally sometimes in workshops, I would push teachers to be like, I want you to envision what does your classroom sound like? What does it feel like? What do you hear? When you are envisioning 5 to 10 years from now, like, and someone steps foot on the resort, what are you seeing? What are you hearing? What are you smelling? Like, what is that experience going to
Yeah,
be?
so we have it in our plan that we have employee housing duplex, which is actually I think an A-frame. Again, I don't know what our final version is. I have it's been a while since I've looked at it, but we do have employee housing. So my vision is that like we have someone living on property and then we get to just sort of zip over because we can walk to it from our house, zip over and engage when we want to engage. And we also built into our lodge some offices there. So I picture like having, someone there during the day. I love the personal touches. Like I've stayed at auto camps before and I just love being able to like have some a little bit of grab and go or like have some special things like charcuterie boards. So I don't know, I kind of envision a little bit more hands off than like a full service resort, but to allow people to kind of have their own experience, but still have
Huh?
some things where it's like, okay, do we have a food truck in the morning for breakfast? Do we
I
have
love that.
some options for them to grab stuff from the store? So yeah, I feel like I think things change a little bit of how you see as things keep going. Like, okay, what do we really want it to be? But I do feel like I want people to feel warm, but also not. It's not going to be like someone there like a Four Seasons, basically. So
Yeah. Are people coming with, like, their families and staying at different cabins,
yes.
or is it, like, all strangers?
So we're going to do it both ways. So because we have a special use for weddings, the idea would be that someone could rent out the whole property, which again is very difficult to do up here. There's not a lot of places that you can rent out for a wedding and then have
Mhm.
the guest stay. So we're at about 120 that could stay on the property when it's fully complete. So it would be like kind of that nice mid-size to smaller wedding, depending on how you look at that,
Yeah.
for people to stay and all know each other. But I also want to set it up where people, we were designing this for during COVID, so it was a little bit interesting because we had these separate cabins, but we do have a lot of gathering spaces, and I think that was really affected by COVID. Like I think I was thinking about the future and being like, we're gonna want to have this like connection with other people again, so we
Yeah.
have a lot of shared fire pits. We're going to have, some shared spaces like that for people to be able to gather, because I do think that there are types of people that want to interact and meet new people. I think some, and they're able to not if they don't want to, but I think like
Right.
there is that sense of like, okay, we're going to stay at a place that has these other amenities, and there's going to be other people that we can kind of hang out and get to know. So I think that's
Yeah.
really fun to envision. And we've built in a lot of trails and a lot of spaces. Um, there's a creek that runs through it. So just a lot of fun things like that. My kid has so many ideas. He wants to have like a frog
I love that
release.
because I feel like he is one of the ideal
Uh,
guests, right?
yeah, that's my motivation for going a little bit sooner than I don't wanna miss that because I want him to be involved, and
Yeah.
he's so excited about, like, planning out the playground or, um, planning out some of those spaces, so I think it'd be really fun to get him involved in that. I mean, he's been helping with the rentals since he was little just because I would drag him
Right, since
around
he was
with
born.
me, so he's kind of just been immersed in this world and kind of I don't wanna push that on him, but it's fun to see him when he's gets as excited as I am about projects. I'm like,
Yeah.
"Okay, this is what we're doing it for, and if this is something that he loves, it'd be so fun to, like, can have him continue."
Yes, 100%. Okay, before we wrap up, I wanna do a couple hot topics with you because you've been hosting for so long. So I, like, deeply value your insight. So these are just things that I hear people talking about all the time, and I wanna know what your stance is on them. So for your properties, pet friendly or no?
No.
Not at any of
No.
them. Why not?
I just
Not worth the
I think
hassle?
it just I've seen places some of the places that are pet friendly, and I do appreciate it because I travel with my pet. It's just a lot of wear and tear, and we have a lot of people that have almost more negative if it's pet friendly because they might have an allergy to a pet.
Yeah.
So we've been able to like keep our prices, keep our revenue up and not had to add that to it. And I'm gonna stick to it.
Okay. All right. How about labels?
We label everything. Is that what you mean?
Mm,
We
yeah.
label everything and we've gotten so much compliments on it. We label every light switch, we label in every drawer what's supposed to be there. It helps the cleaner, it helps the guest. Um, people have been loving it. They say it's like they're the most organized Airbnb. So they don't look the best, I think, and they're a lot of upkeep, but people
Yeah.
have really like we'll get reviews where they say that. And I'm like, okay, we're gonna keep at it.
All right. All right. How about well, you mentioned direct booking is one of them, but you did mention that you didn't have it for years and you have it now. What encouraged you to make the switch?
I think we were a little naive that people would just book through us direct and it would be great and we would not have to have a channel manager. um and that's not the case. We do have direct booking, but we're still majority Airbnb. And we still have guests that like just will not book direct with us. They just keep booking on Airbnb and I'm like, "Okay, you know it and you love it. I get it." But
Same.
yeah, it's so strange. I really thought like, okay, this is going to be an avenue. And I've even sent it to people like guests have asked me, I don't do it on Airbnb, obviously, but if they like have stayed and they're like, hey, we want to stay again, I'm like, oh, book direct. And they're like, no, we'll just book on Airbnb. I'm like, okay, we'll save you
I
money.
know.
So we do have a percentage and we have host away. So we're able to kind of see that. So it is my goal
That's what I
to
used to.
continue to try to like get that up. Are you on Google Vacation too?
No, I've never even heard of
So
Google
Google
Vacation.
Vacation and through HostAway, you should be able to do that. It actually might already be pushing it and you don't know because then I think it just pushes it back to your site. So that will be interesting to
Huh.
look into.
Yeah.
Um,
I've literally never heard of Google Vacation. That's so funny. Of course they're doing vacation
yes.
stuff.
And when you Google, it shows up. So,
Yep, there it is. Okay.
but I think it does just push it back to your site. So that's maybe why you didn't necessarily realize it. But I think HostAway should be able to break that down for you. So you should look at it and see if you're getting.
But we have, like, no direct booking. Like, I mean, I've gotten,
Which
like,
is
maybe
surprising because you
3
have a
or
really
4.
great following online.
That's why I did it, because everyone was like, "You're so stupid." Because for years, I was like, "No to direct bookings," and everyone's like, "You're so stupid. You should do it. You should do it." So I spent all this energy setting it up, and I am just not a
I
fan.
know. No,
It's not, and
I feel nervous too because I feel sometimes I'm like, do I know this person? Are they gonna like I feel like there is a protection even for hosts through Airbnb.
I
So it is a
agree.
little scary to do it. It's like if you're just doing it for someone that hasn't stayed with you before. I had someone approach me on Instagram that wanted to stay one night and I'm like, I don't know you. I think I should just put it through
Right.
Airbnb because it makes me nervous. But we do have in all of
Right.
our units scan this to book again online, save money. Like we've tried all these things, but yeah,
I just don't think I've compared the numbers, and because HostAway charges credit card fees, and then if you were to split it so that you benefit for doing direct, when you compare the numbers, they're just not all that
that's true,
different.
and you're having to do all your own marketing in a way where if you were, I think that that's the thing. Airbnb is like the Kleenex. Like people know it, they trust it. They're spending so much money in advertising that it's almost like a second nature. Like I'm going to go book something, I'm going to look on Airbnb. And
Right.
so, yeah, it's so interesting to hear that from you because yeah, I was surprised because you do have such a good following that I was like, "Oh, and people have done it." I know Losswood
Yeah, some people.
Losswood Farms is like an eco resort up like kind of close to us in Boyne Falls, and she pretty much only is direct and only gets a little bit for
Right.
Airbnb. And I don't know if it's just because she's also really great at marketing and has been in magazines, but I don't know what it is. Like I'm like, good for you. I'm glad that's what you do. But
Right, but I can't crack Pepin Forest Treehouse. Jen was just on the podcast, and she's been at 80% direct booking since she launched, and I heard that, and I was just like, "What?"
so
Like, I mean, and so there's obviously a way to do it. I'm not doing it. I do think there's reservation among folks, but now I'm like, I want to quit it, but I'm like, but we have like a reservation in the summer that was booked on it. So if I quit it before then, where do I put that reservation? I think they figured out a way to hook you in.
yeah, and I almost feel like it's still nice to have that because we use it a lot for family and friends. So before I would always feel obligated if someone asked me, I'd be like, sure, I'll just give it to you for free. Even though I don't think that's what they were even asking. They were just trying to recommend me to
Right.
their people. So I'm able to like do discount codes or discounted stays and then it still shows up
Yeah.
as a reservation. So my cleaners still like view it
Right.
as a clean. They still get all the messaging. So I do like it for that. And especially in the off season, we have a lot of like influencers that come. We do let we, kind of give our spaces away a lot more freely. So it's
Yeah.
been helpful that way. But yeah, I agree. It's like I just haven't put as much pressure on myself to be like, wait, you're failing at this because I'm realizing when I talk to people, they're like, no, I'm in the same boat.
No, I've heard from other people too who are like, "How is HostAway going?" And I'm like, "It's not." And they're like, "Same. I have like none." And it's not inexpensive.
Yeah.
Yeah, not a fan. But Carrie, this was great.
Yeah.
Thank you for taking
I
the
feel like
time
we
to
could
chat with
talk
me.
for like hours. So
I know. And this is what's so fun about this because I did grow up in Airbnb without a community. And even now, I don't have many friends here in North Carolina that have Airbnbs, but there is this like virtual world of people that I feel like, and in a weird way, it doesn't feel like there's a ton of competition. It feels very much like everyone's cheering each other on and willing to share these things, which is why I'm so grateful that you joined today
come
because you have
stay
so
at
much
the
knowledge.
A-frame.
Yes.
Open
Yes.
invitation.
Okay. Okay, we need to figure out, I want to take a sabbatical
Yes.
and just travel for like 3 months and go to all these different places, because there's so many places I want to go, but we travel so much to Maine for our cabin that it's like so hard to make trips other places.
Research.
Well, this is what I'm saying. If I bring my podcast mic, can I like write off everything?
100%.
Right? Camera and podcast mic. Let's just
and social media content. I feel like you have lots of avenues.
One day, that is the dream. It was so good to meet you. Thank you so much for doing this. Thanks so much for joining us. And if you liked what you heard, feel free to leave us a 5-star rating on Spotify or share some of your favorite parts over on Apple Podcast. If you have feedback or suggestions for the future, you can also find me on Instagram at Cozy Rock Cabin. Looking forward to next week.